Good evening, everyone. Welcome to episode 11 of Lockdown Theater, entertainment for the homebound. So I've always had a bit of a schoolboy crush on Demi Moore. Maybe it's because she's the first actress that I can recall thinking was hot back in the day. Maybe it's because of her raspy voice that I've always found kind of sexy. Hell, I even bought her memoir. I haven't read it, but I have it. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to discuss tonight's movie, Striptease. So I just finished reading the book, Striptease, and I thought this would also be a good opportunity to showcase the poster, which I have in my collection as well. It's, kind of airbrushed to within an inch of its life, but I like her, so I have the poster. So Striptease was released in 1996, and at a point where Demi Moore was a very big box office attraction. She was a member of the Brat Pack, as you may recall, back in the 80s with films like St. Elmo's Fire and one of my favorites, About Last Night. But it wasn't really until 1990's Ghost where she really exploded into a major box office draw. I mean, right after Ghost came this really terrible movie, Nothing But Trouble, but then there was Mortal Thoughts and The Butcher's Wife, and then came A Few Good Men, which was, of course, a massive hit. Then came Indecent Proposal, which was another massive hit, which has actually a bit of a circular connection to Striptease, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then came a film called Disclosure, which was another big hit, which really required her to be kind of a sexually predatory character. So it's in that context that we find Demi Moore taking the role of Erin Grant in Striptease. Now, Demi Moore was paid $12.5 million for Striptease, which up until that point was the highest amount ever paid for an actress in a film. So it's kind of a benchmark film in that regard. So Striptease was written and directed by Andrew Bergman, who has been involved in some of the funniest movies I can recall. I mean, he was a co-writer on Blazing Saddles, which should tell you something. He was a writer on the Chevy Chase film Fletch, which was hilarious. He was a co-writer on a film called Soap Dish, which I have in my collection, which is one of the funniest movies around. I like to break that movie out every so often and have a good laugh. And he was also the writer-director of a film called Honeymoon in Vegas. And this is where the connection to Striptease comes in. So Indecent Proposal, as you may recall, had the high concept of a rich man who was played by Robert Redford offering $1 million to a financially distraught couple who is played by Woody Harrelson and Demi Moore. If he could spend, he'd offer them $1 million for a night with the wife. So there was kind of that moral quandary that formed the crux of the conflict in that story. There was the will he or will they or won't they, sort of mechanism going on there. So Honeymoon in Vegas has a similar concept. So the rich man in this one is played by James Caan, and the couple is Nicolas Cage and Sarah Jessica Parker. And so in order to forgive a gambling debt incurred by the Nicolas Cage character, James Caan will forgive the debt if he can spend a weekend with the wife. So there's a similar morally questionable plot line in that is similar to Indecent Proposal. So Honeymoon in Vegas, written and directed by Andrew Bergman, who wrote and directed Striptease, which starred Demi Moore, who is in Indecent Proposal, which had a similar storyline to Honeymoon in Vegas. See how this all kind of works out? So there are some differences which are typical with book to film adaptations. The book tends to go into much more detail than the film. And interestingly, what I found is that the book tends to go much to a darker place than the film, which tries to keep things very sort of, lighter and fluffier. The book sort of has a bit of a sinister edge to it. And the movie tries to really focus on the comedy, and it sort of succeeds. One of the major criticisms of the film at the time of its release was that you had all of these, oddball characters populating the story, and they were all kind of wacky in their own ways. except for the Demi Moore character, who was the straight woman in a sea of oddballs. And, she seemed to be in one movie about child custody, and everyone else was in this, crime, comedy about strippers in South Florida. And so there was a major disconnect in the tonality of the film. And I think, that contributed to, why it was not very financially successful here in America upon its release. And, the movie does have its funny parts. I guess Burt Reynolds, who was hoping for a bit of a movie comeback with Striptease, is actually quite funny in a bit in some of his scenes. He plays kind of a lecherous congressman in Striptease, and he does have some funny moments, sort of poking fun at his own womanizing kind of reputation. The movie does have a very, very talented cast: Armand Assante, Ving Rhames, Robert Patrick, Burt Reynolds, and Demi Moore. So it's got a great pedigree behind it. It's just that the tonal disconnect is so apparent, and the chasm is so wide that it just can't it can't coalesce. So, but the main reason why you would go to see Striptease is to, Demi Moore's naked. That's part of the reason why she got her $12.5 million payday, is because she's topless. And, good for her for, going the whole way with a stripper character. But, so in that respect, it's fine. She's looks phenomenal, and, she dances, and she looks great. So if that's what you want to see, then by all means, check out Striptease. It does have some funny moments, like I said, but generally it's not the best movie in the world, let's be honest. So that's all I got for you tonight for Lockdown Theater, episode 11. So I don't know what I'm going to be watching next, but I'm trying a bit of a new set here, so we'll see if this works going forward. But yeah, that's all I got for tonight. So thank you for tuning in, and until next time, be good to each other and be safe.